would we still be beggars in the 21st century?
Our leaders are not, I repeat, they are not ignorant or innocent of what is happening in this continent. We have leaders whose hearts are not courageous enough to do what they have as vision for their continent. There is a portion of the Bible that says in Proverbs chapter 22 verse 7, it says the rich rule over the poor and the borrower is a slave to the lender. You see, slave trade has evolved from one stage to another. It has not been abolished. They have shifted from physical slavery to mental slavery. And that is a kind of slavery which is more dangerous. 2 Corinthians 4:4 says, the God of this world has blinded the minds of the people. A blind mind is more dangerous than a blind eye. One of the things we fail to understand in this continent is that the advanced slavery which has been introduced to us is not carrying us to Europe to go and work in plantations anymore. It's keeping us permanently in a position where we'll constantly be borrowing from the world, the International Monetary Fund, and the World Bank. And as long as Africa continues to borrow from the West, it maintains us as slaves forever. Maybe you have not come across that scripture, Proverbs 22 verse 7. A borrower is a slave to the lender. How does the African leadership or leaders come into play with the suffering of the masses? It is because these leaders are greedy. These leaders are self-centered. These leaders are egoistic. These leaders are very, very myopic. They go to power not seeing politics as a vocation to serve the people. They go there as a means to satisfy themselves. Like we said yesterday, genuine leaders are those who lay down their lives for others to live. As a matter of fact, being a leader, you are a sacrifice for the well-being of others. A few African leaders have proven to us that we cannot lay every blame to the colonial masters that came to Africa. Before we continue, many other continents were colonized. There was the Arab uprising that kicked out the colonial master. The Indians were colonized. South America was colonized. Brazil was colonized by the Portuguese. But now Brazil is rising to become a world power. Are you people telling us that India, that was colonized by Britain, and Mahatma Gandhi picked a document in 1946 signed by the nations of the world after the United Nations and said every country has its sovereignty, and Mahatma Gandhi began a civil disobedience riot, non-violent, and because of that he pressed charges until India was given independence. India came from the root of the British. Rwanda we see today in Africa, let me not quote out of Africa because we are quote out of Africa, they will say it is because they are in South America, because they are in Asia. Rwanda came from the Belgians in 1962, gave them independence. We all know what Rwanda has gone through in terms of crisis and the civil war. Rwanda has bounced back. It was a colonized economy, but it is rising every day without even having the resources some economies have. Ghana was colonized by the British. Ghana is rising up to the extent where there was, in the time of John Agbekum Kufuor, a Ghana city was equivalent to the dollars. Ghana is the only country America has accepted to sign bilateral deals with, where things can be exported from America to Ghana, and likewise from Ghana to America. America does not only ship into Ghana, Ghana equally ships into America. Is Ghana from space? Recently, God raised a man that gave us an understanding that we must not live by borrowing loans from out of the country. John Joseph Pombe Magufuli of Tanzania. I'm talking about leaders in Africa. We'll talk about the post-colonial and the pre-colonial leadership. Then we'll talk about why people are greedy in Africa and we are trying to lay blames on other people. Okay. Magufuli came, let me learn, Mr. Leo, to give us the impression that you mustn't borrow to succeed. And he took the Tanzania economy to a middle income economy with a lot of infrastructures and other investment. Before he left, he built a refinery to process gold in Tanzania, which now processes gold as a finished product to be kept in Fort Knox in Switzerland, in Bouillons. Golds leave Africa for 40 million, and they are kept in the Fort Knox in Switzerland. It pays at least 50 million a month. Multiply it times 12 months is 600 million for 40 million gold, because we don't know how to process golds in Africa. We'll come back to other issues to make us understand that Africa are the cankerworm that is eating their own herbs.
Okay, we have incompetent people in our communities. We have very irresponsible persons in our quarters and in our classrooms, our job sites. Definitely the leadership that is going to be served to us is emanating from our societies.
Mr. Leo, the problem we have to be asking is the persons who are in leadership, where do they get the chunks of money that they take to Europe to go and cater for their health? If they say Africa is poor, the leader's hands are tight. A leader's hand is not tight to build houses in America. A leader's hands are not tight to build his personal hospital in Germany.
To send the children to school.
To send the children to very expensive schools. A leader's hand is not tight when the daughter of a president is paying $13,000 as taxi fare in another country. A leader's hand is not tight when they buy the most expensive cars. A leader's hand is not tight when they dress the most expensive suits on earth. When they go spend weeks and months in hotels abroad. Their hands are not tight. A leader's hand is not tight when in the nation where we live, most of the property belongs to them. How do we explain that a leader's hand is tight in developing the community? A leader's hand is not tight when ministers steal billions of dollars, embezzle them. Their hands are not tight. Are you telling us that colonial masters came to Africa here? They are the ones who are telling the leaders to steal? Are you telling us that the colonial masters came to Africa, they are the ones that told the leaders not to build good hospitals and fly abroad to go and take treatment there? Are you telling us that the colonial master that told our leaders not to construct good roads that they themselves will run their vehicles on it? Are you the one telling us that the leaders will buy expensive cars for themselves and protect themselves at the expense of the people? What is this 1 million man question about colonial master, colonial master, colonial master? Let us accept or agree that the colonial master has taken 75% of our resources. The balance 25%, a wise man said, what you have in your hand, if you can think well, it is enough. What you have in your hand, if you can think well, it is enough. I'm wondering if we have to have in our hands the money. How do you explain that Namibia has a GDP of $12.37 billion? It's a middle income economy. While Cameroon has a GDP of $39.01 billion. Yet we are not a middle income economy. Look at the gap. The gross domestic product of Namibia, which is a country that gained independence on the 21st of March 1994 and 1990 from South Africa. This country has a gross domestic product, of $12.37 billion. Yet it is a middle income economy. While Cameroon, our nation, has $39.01 billion as GDP, yet we have not attained. If a country's economy is calculated based on the GDP, and it shows that a country with a lesser GDP supposed not to be at a middle income economy, while that of a higher GDP is low, it is to tell you that the money is in the system, but it is in the hand of very few individuals. You see prime ministers in Europe and other countries going to work on bike, but the convoy of a mayor, not minister. Before we talk about minister and talk about president or prime minister, the convoy of a mayor, the convoy of a DO or an SDO in our community is money that can be used to construct at least 2 roads. Roads we don't have, but we have convoy that escort men to places. What are we talking about? If we say we are not going to blame the leaders of Africa for mismanaging the resources, we are hanging our weaknesses and our irresponsibility upon the colonial masters. The colonial masters themselves, they make a mockery of us because even the little they gave us, we have not been able to manage it. Why would the Chinese come to Africa and say Uhuru Kenyatta is an idiot? A Chinese man sits in Kenya, in Nairobi, and insults Kenyans, saying that you people are idiots. That's how we see you. Even Kenyatta is an idiot. I only came here because I needed money. Right in Kenya. It is to tell you that they have sat down, look at the way we operate, and realize that we are operating like poor of a very low mental capacity. That is to tell us that we have to wake up. Let us stop the blame game of colonial master here, colonial master. India is coming up forcefully, and it was colonized like any other country. It's coming up. Brazil is coming up. It was colonized by the same Portuguese that colonized Mozambique, that colonized Angola, that colonized Guinea-Bissau, that colonized Cape Verde. It's the same Portuguese that colonized Brazil, colonized Argentina. But those countries are rising and rising. I want us to talk only within Africa, because if you call Asia, they will say because it's out of Africa, or you call South America. I'm talking Africa here. Belgians colonized Rwanda. Why is Rwanda rising?
Leo.
Okay, come in.
Leo, can I chip in a bit with something?
Okay,
Leo,
come in.
Leo, I think he's taking something. Sorry, I have to chip in a bit. The essence of Ubuntu is to give the responsibility of development in the hands of Africa. We are not there. Ubuntu is there to say Africans have to take their responsibilities in their hand. Nobody is saying that the colonial masters are fault. Ubuntu is there to sensitize Africans that we are responsible.
Madam, he's just raising a point. He's not coming against what you said. No, he's rather buttressing what you are saying.
I am supporting what you are saying, madam.
Yeah, I don't believe. Okay, good. You know, because I think that's the essence. I mean, we have to say Africans are obstacles to their development.
But that is what he's saying.
But Africans in general are obstacles to develop.
That is what he's saying.
That's what I'm saying, madam.
Yeah.
Okay.
You didn't get me very well. Because a few Africans have decided to lay blames on the colonial master. The song we have in Africa is that colonialism is the author and the trouble for our nations and our continent. But the truth is, colonial era has passed. What are we doing in this era as leaders of this time? What are we Africans doing in this post-colonial period? The education they gave us, we have discovered all the tricks that were in that education. We have preached against it and proffer practical ideas to counter the ideas that were instilled in our system as educational pattern. We have now come also to on television program to sensitize Africans concerning, and there are videos all over circulating the world. African organizations and Pan-African movements are all over the place sensitizing Africans. Why is it that Africans are not growing at the pace of the sensitization? It is because we have a group of self-centered, egocentric, greedy, and very hard-hearted leaders who, when given the opportunity to serve their community, they see it as a means to energize and empower themselves at the expense of the masses. Okay. So let us wake up as Africans and face the reality.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Liu and guest members. I'm Dr. Abang Luis, writing from Yaoundé. I'm so grateful for this program. How I wish our African leaders are watching and change. Okay. Let African leaders take examples from Tanzania. The late president that we cannot evolve as it is today because our hands are completely tied. That's what you said.
We are divided.
Mr. Liu, let me address this issue from another perspective. Okay. We are talking leadership here in a generic sense, but there are three categories of leadership. There is the political class of leadership, there is a business class of leadership, and there's the academic class of the elites. These three categories of leadership in Africa, we are almost globalizing them or trying to assemble them to be one. We do not only need politicians to cause a revolution in Africa. The business class can equally cause a revolution in Africa. If colonialism did not hold Aliko Dangote to become a multi-billionaire, I don't think colonialism can hold us from carrying out activities in this continent.
We have Amadou Babadan Pulo.
There are many, I don't want to cite, there are many. giving a few analysis on the different class of leadership, what about political leadership, the business leadership, and also the academic elites.
No, we are talking about religion. Africa today imports so much from the world because of religion now. We are not dominating yeah.
That's what I'm trying to let you understand, that if we are talking leadership, it would appear we are focusing only on political leadership. The person that negotiated the liberation of America from the hands of the British was Benjamin Franklin. He was a bookbinder in a printing press. He wasn't an academician. He was a little businessman. With his initiative, he negotiated France, and France came and they ousted Britain from America. That is not somebody who was in the political class. We are talking about liberation can come from any angle, because it would appear the liberation stuff is centered only in the hands of the head of states. Leadership can come from any angle. African leaders have gone to very high echelons. First and foremost, things like the Nobel Peace Prize was something that it was difficult for an African to have, until we have academic allies like Wole Soyinka, who came in 1986 and then won the Nobel Peace Prize in Literature, Wangari Maathai in 1994 from Kenya during the Great Revolution. I'm talking about people who can come from any angle. It doesn't take only African politicians to bring liberation in the continent of Africa. If Africa can have Dangotes and Lajba Dampulu and other billionaires like 20 million or 30 million, because China is trying to raise 300 millionaires in the next 10 years. When a country is economically empowered, even the political class cannot make noise. Dangote influences presidents in Africa today because of the amount of economic wealth he possesses. We are talking about people booming the economy. Colonial masters cannot stop us from getting rich. If they were, then the billions and billions and hundreds of billionaires in Nigeria would have been stopped. That's the problem we're talking. There is Alex Onyema, the man who has Peace Air. He has about 30-something aircrafts. That's the man that trained America. And Nigeria is independent to a certain extent because of the amount of billionaires, people who can sponsor movements. Africa's economic backwardness is one of the major reasons why they are being dominated. Not the political flaws, not the political stagnation. That Aliko Dangote grew in this Africa. It didn't grow in space. Mo Ibrahim is a Sudanese British who is a multi-billionaire, and he empowers African presidents and gives them a reward of $5 million for good leadership. That's something that is being used to ginger. If we have strong economic leadership, we can influence the academic and the political sector. And I don't think the Europeans can hold anybody from being financially buoyant. If you come to Cameroon, you will see billionaires. Fosso Victor was there. He had no PhD. He was not a leader in the economic, the political class. Was he in the academic class? He was a leader in the business class.
Kaji de
Fosso. So if we are talking about leadership, if the political class has failed, what about the economic class? Those who are talking here, who colonize our economy also. These guys who go out of the country and they are setting businesses here and there, did they not see colonial masters in Africa? In South Africa right now, we have Valery Vezakov. He is the one that controls the diamond. That's a businessman that came into Central African Republic and saw what was there and then linked it back to the government. When Central Africa had a little problem, the president was interested in the country because a businessman came there to set up a structure. Gazprom is a Russian oil company in Africa. Lukoil is the same thing, Russia. We have Total in Africa. We have Razer that construct roads. We have Root that construct roads. Those are state companies in different countries in Africa. How many African countries have state companies to manage affairs? You go to Nigeria in the civil engineering, it is Julius Berger that ties all the roads and carry all the structures there. It's the British company. Where are our own African companies that can stand and contest for road construction in Gabon, Equatorial Guinea, Brazzaville? All what we do is that we sit and make noise and eat government money. Cameroonians, Central Republics, Nigerians, set up your own Gazprom, set up your own Total. Total goes to the extent of not only extracting oil. We have Perenco, we have Friedlander, we have Total. Those are French companies, not just extracting oil here, they equally process and retail in petrol stations called Total. Where is our own companies? People who have no economic backbone cannot influence political activities. That is the reason why in most countries, it's the businessmen that decide who is the president.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Liu, and the other members in the studio. Please, to begin with, I will start with the educational system in Africa. We need to introduce or to empower ourselves with vocational education. Prince Ivo Ego, writing from Yaoundé. I would like Mr. Ghana to come in.
We keep on suffering, so we have to do a lot of sensitization, grassroots work, mobilization, to make sure that we give our people the right information so that they can bring about change that is needed in our society.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Tata Veye. Apostle Ambe Valentine Ngwa. Africa is looking forward to good leadership and responsible citizens. How do we meet that objective?
Yes, Mr. Leo, from the 1960s where we got independence, we got people who began sensitizing Africans. Africans cannot be studying one thing for 60 years and they have not come to understand it. People like Mwalimu Kambarake Nyerere were trained in Britain, Kwame Nkrumah were trained in Britain, Agostinho Antonio Neto were trained in Portugal, America Kakabra were trained in Portugal. All those guys, when they gave them the colonial education. But when they studied what was given to them and what they were seeing on ground, they thought they were racing their countrymen in black skin, not knowing that they were racing people to fight against them. You mean to tell me that Mwalimu Kambarake Nyerere, Julius Kwame Nkrumah, America Kakabra, Modibo Keita, Sekou Touré, Thomas Sankara, who rose and began sensitizing Africans since around the 60s and the 70s. At this level, Africans are not sensitive enough to have known that the education given to them is wrong? Are you telling me that all the education that Africans have been pumping through different platforms with this advanced technology age, where we have been educating people very fast and a rapid circulation of information, Africans have not come to consciousness? What will keep laying emphasis of the education that was given to us? It gives me a serious concern, because late in the 60s, where these guys were educated, they began rioting. They started nationalism. I think it's our approach. I was called by a Pan-African organization in America to give them a write-up on what I think should be the approach. I think that the approach we are supposed to use right now is not a nationalist mentality. It should be like the church that is operating in China, the underground church. They are doing evangelism, but the state does not know. I think that most of the people that came up like Steve Biko Bantu, E.W. Du Bois, Malcolm X, and the rest who stood as Pan-Africanists, they were too vocal. We should carry out underground expression, underground education of the Pan-Africanism in our system. Our approach is wrong, not the education.
Okay, we shouldn't
our
go
approach
the
is
1960
wrong.
ways.
Yes,
because times have evolved.
Times have evolved, and this time around we have to take it in another dimension. We have to take a different approach, because why? The approach we use eliminated all our giants.
Okay.
So the approach is the problem, not the education. We should stop emphasizing
please,
education. People are well educated.
Yes. 1 minute and 1 minute for
obvious that Ambe will not see that part of education, but I'll always remind.
No, I've seen the part.
Education
I
has
repeat
a
it. I've
serious
seen that
problem.
part of education, but people have been educated enough.
Please, 1 minute.
The education of the African person is not an education that will help the person to identify himself. And irrespective of the fact that we do have that idea that the education is not good, it depends also on what we want to